let me tell you a little thing. I received a piece of advice a very long time ago about writing, creativity, and so forth, and speculative stuff. Basically, the idea was that the concept of the premise is fundamentally a what-if question. What if there were vampires, and they were shiny, and nobody liked them? What if there were clowns on the moon? What if eating cheese gave you superpowers? Any number of what-if questions. But there's a problem with this, I think. Is that you have to have the question in order to then go anywhere, right? Because the work that you create is the answer to the question, right? But you have to have the question in order to start. And if you're working in spaces like we do with Dungeons and Dragons, which are loaded with tropes, and I mean absolutely packed to the brim with tropes, how do you find a what-if question that hasn't been answered, or that you feel hasn't been answered, or just that spawns something new, right? How do you come up with a what-if question for these kinds of spaces when they feel so solid despite, you know, how much you might be recombining other materials? And for that, I propose a follow-up question. What if it wasn't? So, okay, you have the understanding that orcs are generally big, scary, bad dudes. What if they weren't? You generally have the understanding that dwarves are, you know, like, live in mountains and such. What if they didn't? You generally have the understanding that Dungeons and Dragons is about combat. What if it wasn't? So, this line of questioning can take you a whole lot of places, both in terms of story content and in terms of gameplay ideas. Because, you know, usually you push the button and you would expect what to happen, and what if it was the other thing? It's a classic case of the switcheroo. It can be a lot of fun, especially if things are starting to get tedious, or your players are starting to learn all your tricks. That they're just like, it's one of these. It's our DM doing that thing. We should do X because we know what it is already. And thus is ruined the element of surprise. So if you are turning the tables on the whole situation and flipping the whole thing topsy-turvy, you reclaim that fresh feeling without necessarily having to dunk your brain to some sort of, you know, into the ether and hope that you catch something. This metaphor is odd. Basically, like, ideas are elusive, and whenever you want them, they're not there, so you might as well do some research and then spawn off, right? Inspiration is the best form of idea generation. Sitting in front of a blank piece of paper is never helpful. Don't do it. It never works. So, next time you need to come up with some ideas, ask yourself not only what if, but also what if it wasn't? And see if you can come up with something fresh, new, exciting. Generally just, you know, have a simple resource that's much more useful than a blank sheet of paper and the looming concept of originality. Because it's not a useful concept. It's just a lie we tell ourselves as artists or creatives of any kind. So yes, working in speculative, fictive spaces, you gotta ask yourself, what if, and what if it wasn't? How long have I been talking for? I don't even know. It was very fast. Oh my gosh, I'm like half time! I have 5 minutes to like come up with something else for that. Probably talked at 1,000,000 miles an hour. I could have done that slower. Okay, so what else? What else can we? What other brain spin can we put on the idea of what if versus what if it wasn't? I like to visualize variations upon cliches or known themes as kind of like a step to the left. Just as, you know, like, here's what it usually is. I'm not taking it forward because I'm not necessarily like adding to it, because that would be adding, and I'm not necessarily subtracting from it. I'm just kind of like, this thing instead. How do you visualize making variations to cliches and to known methods of doing things? Because trying to create taxonomies and so on and so forth to like figure out how our brain works and how to do creativity is always helpful, because creativity is hard, and anybody who tells you it's easy is a liar. A liar with a lot of ideas or very little inhibition in regards to those ideas. And probably just a lot of luck. Meanwhile, over here in the real world, we have to find ways. Finding ways is good. New piece of advice. Use cliches, but use them differently. Use your dragon in a castle. Create variation. We've all seen it. It's very fun when there's some sort of subversion of trope. It's good. We enjoy it. I'm gonna need a drink after this. All this chatterboxing. Have I dithered away enough time yet? We just don't know. Wow. 5 minutes goes so fast when you are on the right track, and yet, like, 2.5 minutes is just an unbearable length of time when you're running out of material. But I do want to give it enough gravitas. And covering some other peripheral ideas in a meandering fashion. There's nothing wrong with that. This is how we brainstorm. This is how we learn. This is how we come up with things on the fly. This right here is about improvisation. I haven't stopped talking. I haven't completely lost the plot. Have a go at this. Try starting off on one thread and see how long you can pull it out for. More idea stuff. Basically, I'm going to call this what if versus what if it wasn't, this particular piece of recording, particular piece of video. But that's not really what it's about. It's about the meandering nature of creativity and the ways in which we try to capture it into its quintessential elements when in regard to speculative fiction, fictive spaces, gameplay, and so on and so forth. Let's do a few what ifs for the last minute before we call time. How about that? Okay, so we function on a grid, usually. And you move generally in like straight directions, whether that be, you know, forward, backwards, left, right, or diagonals. But, right, provided you can, you have the maneuvering distance on your character, why not move in a curve? Even in a relatively open space, like, because we have this idea that we have to, like, move sort of in one direction only, but what if you did some odd maneuver? What if you did that? What if it was good? I don't know how you would jig that up, but what if? What if? Why would you do that? Come up with a reason.